just watching you guys put stuff together, I'm like, I feel like I'm at work and everyone actually knows what I'm doing, kind of deal. Like usually when I'm here doing this stuff, no one knows what's happening. So it's kind of, it was nice.
Well, that's because it's not work.
No, but at work, everyone that's there is there doing the same job, so everyone knows what's going on. But like when you're in a situation like this, everyone has their own job, and very few of them are tech.
I wasn't even aware I had a job.
No, I mean, when I say this, I mean theater.
Okay.
So, like usually in the theater, like the stuff that you guys did today, there's 4 of us in the room now that know what's going on, which is 4 times the number that normally do. So.
Well, that's a great transition. So with us today, we have Kelly Vaccaro. If we're going with the Italian, we're going with the Italian, yeah, the luxury. So Kelly and I were first introduced when we were helping out Brittany Thierman from Neighborhood School Dance set up a show in Pennsylvania. Yep. And that was a lot of fun, a wild time for sure. And, well, Kelly is the person that I attribute to getting me back into the world of community theater. For a long time in high school, I enjoyed doing it. Tech person through and through. Absolutely loved being able to run the fly systems. And now, after some time has passed, I've found myself going towards more of the electronics because I'm a true nerd. And thanks you to Kelly for bringing me back into it. And I've now helped, even paint this stage and do a number of really grunt work activities, but things that I love to do as a part of crew.
I'm always trying to rope people in, so we have the best crew. Because it's hard to find people who, doing stuff like that is awesome, and you can't always find people that want to or will, but it's also great to have people who can run the show. And it's hard, sometimes that's a hard time commitment, which I know you've not been able to do a lot of them because of that, but also because some of it is more skilled stuff that you don't see a lot of people with that, not just that they don't have the ability, but they don't want the ability. So
why don't we start with where we are and what it is you actually do here?
This is the auditorium for the Olean Community Theater. This used to be the Jewish synagogue, the Temple B'nai Israel. And I wasn't a part of this organization when the building was acquired, but it was part of the reason that I chose to get more involved. They called me and asked if I would run tech for a show, and I had a week to do it.
Oh boy! And
it was fun. That doesn't take a lot for a straight show, but they then asked me to stick around and do more. And I was looking at this building, and my day job, I work in construction, and this building needed some work, and they didn't really have a lot of people who knew a lot about what might go into that. So it kind of felt like a good marriage of my skills to become involved. So we're here with the stage that we just had built. Actually, Lonnie Miller Contracting built the stage for us as a donation last year. You see the amazing lighting from the stained glass windows that came with the building. And we're in the pit where normally the orchestra sets up.
When did you end up taking over operations here?
I don't take over. I'm on the board here. They asked me, it was 3 years ago, not quite 3 years ago. The first show they did on this stage was Diary of Anne Frank. And so I ran tech for it. And it was after that they asked me to stick around. And now I'm the vice president on the board.
So what responsibilities do you have here?
The vice president alone doesn't really have a lot of actual responsibilities. It's just take over if the president can't be there. But I am the resident technical person here, and so I live up in the booth there. I don't know if they can see that from any of these cameras, but I'm kind of in charge of the lighting and the sound, and in a lesser sense, the set constructions and stuff like that. But usually we bring other people in to do those because that's not I'm decent at it, but it's not what I love. So, so that's what I do, mostly lights and sound.
What's it like balancing a full-time job and this?
It can get tricky sometimes. Over the summer, I directed Matilda, the musical, which was the last show we had in this space. And directing is there's a lot to it. It's a big time commitment, but right the week that we had auditions at my job, we went to 12-hour days, 7 days a week. So I was telling Brian earlier, I was getting up at like 4 a.m, going to work, leaving work a little bit early so I could get to rehearsal on time, and then here until like 10 o'clock at night, going home, going to bed, and rinse, repeat the next day, every day, for about 6 weeks.
Well, you're leaving out that you have 4 kids.
I also have 4 kids, yes. 2 of them were in the show, so I got to spend some time with them, but it's a different dynamic being their director than being their mom.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Where did your love for theater start?
I grew up in Olean, so I lived in this area most of my life. And I grew up right across the street from the Olean Theater Workshop on Washington Street, and started doing shows there when I was in high school. And I actually got grounded, and I convinced my parents to still let me go to theater because they paid for me to go. And so then I was like, well, they asked me to do tech for a show. So I ended up, while I was grounded, just being there. Like, I would go after school and just stay there all day. And I did every single thing that I could for every show that I could from then on out, like even after I wasn't grounded anymore. That kind of built my love for it up. And like right through high school, I went to college for theater production, and I worked in Rochester for a couple years doing it, but wanted to get back. I know it's not that far, but I wanted to get back into Olean for my family. This was before I was married and had kids and stuff, but so I just am just doing as much of the community theater as I can while I'm back.
Explain the bridge then between theater and construction. How'd you end up?
So when I was in college, it was the program I went to was primarily geared towards design. And I like to say I'm a creative person, but I'm not a creator. I prefer implementing other people's ideas rather than coming up with my own. And so whenever I had to like design something, I was always like, can I just be an electrician? Like, can I just hang the lights and plug stuff in? And when I moved back to Olean, I was looking for a job, I was like, I can't work in theater in Olean. So my mom worked at the hospital at the time, and they were hiring part-time people, like not part-time, temporary people for a construction job they were doing there. And I had changed an outlet in her house with my technical theater skills. She's like, you should go apply for this job. And I did, and they actually hired me. Like,
yeah,
Stranger Things.
Yeah. So I learned a lot there at the hospital as part of the maintenance crew there. But it was only a temporary job. And then after that, I got into the union.
Oh, okay.
So,
the rest is history. Huh?
Yeah, I went through the apprenticeship with them, and now I'm full-time electrician, journeyman.
Very nice.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I know quite a few people who've done a similar track. That college didn't work out when they wanted to come home, and then because whether they went to school for something that didn't fit the area, and then the union picked them right on up.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because my theater experience is what got me the job.
Really?
Because I actually had some electrical experience.
Oh, okay.
The words are all different, like between theater and construction, like the terms for things are all different. But
the experience translates.
Wires are wire, So that's part of what got me the job. And
talk about defying stereotypes, right? Bridging theater and construction.
And it's been fun though, and it's I love my job. And I love doing this, and it's a nice way to spend a day.
What was it in those first days that really attracted you to the theater?
I always loved watching stories or reading. I would read a lot. I played video games. I always watched movies, and I liked kind of immersing myself in another world. And then when you're doing theater, you're like literally immersing yourself in, like actor. I started out acting. You become another person, like, my the first time I ever did tech, it was like Wednesday, and Mr. Nick Patrone, who ran the Olean Theater Workshop for years and years, he's like, Kelly, you live right across the street. I need you to come Friday night and run Spotlight for a show.
That's how it starts.
Yeah. And that's exactly how we would say it too.
I need you to come Friday night and run Spotlight for the show. My guy can't be here. So I came like Thursday and learned it and ran it on Friday. And I actually used to run Spotlight for the neighborhood school of dance performances. I danced for them before I was in high school. And then when I was in high school and started doing tech there, I used to run Spotlight for those. And I wanted to learn it all. So
what was the first show that it just clicked and you're like, oh yeah, this is it?
Actually, it was not. My first year in college, I was not a theater major. And in the springtime, I came back to watch the spring musical at the high school because I had friends that were in it, and it was closing night, and it was Mr. Patrone running it again. And he's like, "Kelly, stay around, help with Strike." I was like, "Okay," and so I ended up running Strike. And I'm like, I'm not
more
even
than helping.
I'm like, I'm not even here. Like, this is not even. But I loved every moment of it. And I literally like stopped at one point, and in my head, I'm like, why am I not doing this? And I went back to school on Monday and declared theater as my major.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember what show it was?
It was, well, so I always thought it was Oklahoma.
Which was, I remember that when I was in high school.
Yeah.
That was good.
But last year we did Sound of Music, and Karen Lehman-Woolston, who I went to high school with, she's a couple years behind me, was telling me how her sophomore year or her junior year is when they did Sound of Music, but that was the year I came back, so it must have been Sound of Music. And so I thought it was funny because my daughter was in Sound of Music when we did it here last year, and that kind of like solidified her love.
Circle.
Yeah.
Have either of you done any shows or been in any shows?
No, and that actually brings me to one of the points that I was gonna bring up at some point, and that's I distinctly remember when I was in high school. I mean, I had a stick so far up my ass, you could not convince me to do theater, even though deep in the back of my mind I really, really, really wanted to.
That's kind of how I felt in middle school.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend who convinced me to go to summer theater, and I was like, well, if I'm going to go with you, I can do it. And then I met a bunch of other people, and it was all. Those are like they're still my friends.
And it's that easy, right? And it's kind of like, I guess the point of this conversation is just kind of like the message is like, if you're thinking about joining some kind of theater group, just do it.
Just do it.
Make a connection. Make a lot of connections.
And there are so many different things you can do, like just from running the lights, the mics. Building the set, painting the set.
If I had any concept of everything that went into the
it's never
production,
too late.
That's true.
Oh, she will get you before you leave.
Trust me, I have plenty of people trying to gaslight me into doing theater. So,
how about yourself, Noah?
No, I helped with a few. I was in band more in high school, so those were the stage performances. I was busy dealing with lighting and making sure that the sound was working. God, I went to Bolivar, so like our soundboard's from the 70s still. And oh my God, I remember the year our librarian tried to integrate digital microphones with it.
Well, that didn't work at all.
Oh man.
Gosh.
It was I think the first year we did micless for the theater, so everybody was yelling in the auditorium. It was awesome. But no, nothing stage-worthy myself. I was always too intimidated.
And that was me, too. I mean, I was a huge music nerd in high school, but it was like the thought of being on a stage in front of people was so, even though, in band and stuff, you do it all the time, but, you're a little more shielded. You got a bunch of people, you're just sitting there.
Oh, yeah.
Acting, being on stage, presenting a different personality, all of that. It was like, I can't do that. I'm way too this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, oh, man, I look back and I go, I probably missed out on a whole lot of really fulfilling stuff because I couldn't get out of my own head enough to say, just give it a try.
You might have, but, I mean, you also wouldn't be where you are today if things were different.
That's absolutely true.
I mean, I know that I have no problem getting up and doing improv. I love that, which is why when I found out, did you create that group? Did you create that?
It was James's idea.
James's, okay.
But I was like his first fan on the board pushing it. Like.
So we'll definitely talk about that in a moment. And the idea that I have here is I love improv. I love being able to go up on a stage and just go with it. I loathe the idea of going up and rehearsing lines that have already been given to me and constrained to these odd boundaries.
It's funny how many people are the complete opposite. Jake Riggs, who's like probably the greatest actor in this area right now, definitely in his age range anyway. He came to watch our first improv show that we did here, and I saw him afterwards, and I was like, what'd you think? And he's like, he directs, he built my set, like he does it all, and he's like, I mean, you guys were really funny, but I was so uncomfortable the whole time. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I can't imagine being up there and not knowing what to say next. Like, which is funny because like during shows, like he's one of the greatest. He's actually really one of the greatest improvisers on stage. Because if someone doesn't know their line or what comes next, like he's one of the greatest people to get you out of that loop. And I never thought about the fact like that he just might not want to even try it, you know? Well, and there's a lot of people that are like that. So it's funny to hear you say the complete opposite.
Well, the first time I ever got into it, not necessarily improv, but the world of theater in general, I got roped into it, as we usually do. and so they just needed help, someone backstage, back when I was in Allegheny, and I absolutely loved it. The fly systems, like the pulley mechanisms, and just getting like with the nitty gritty of the building of everything, where you get to measure it out, make sure it's perfect for what it needs to be, which when we did Seussical, perfect for what it needs to be is like high tolerance levels. It's like, so you can have
an engineer, can you tell?
Yeah, right. So you get to have a lot of fun with it. And the first show I did was, I think, The Mouse That Roared, and the actors and actresses were so enthusiastic at what they were doing. So it was a middle school, high school performance. So they were pretty good, but it was the enthusiasm, it was the love for the craft that really got me into it, and that familial bond that forms in the background between the actors, the crew, and the director. It's really, really powerful. And the first time that I ever experienced that, I was like, oh, this is what found family brotherhood kind of feels like. You get it really fast.
That was my high school observation was, wow, there's a bunch of kids who never hang out together now.
I can't tell you how many people I know who like met doing a show and now they're married and have children.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can believe it.
Yeah. Or like I said, my daughter was in Sound of Music last year, and the other girl that was like her age, they've known each other forever, but doing that show together, they're like best friends now, and they have been, and they have like nicknames for each other, and they call each other in the middle of the night, and it's
bonding through fire.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a trauma build. Like you guys are under high pressure, doing a lot in a very short period of time. Like when I helped you with crew, we only had a couple weeks to prepare, and it was like really fast paced, and it was fun. It's what started getting me back into that flow, and now I just have to make sure there's enough time in the calendar to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I like about tech too. I was talking about this with someone just the other day. Like I haven't been on stage but twice since high school. But when you commit to being in a play, it's 6 to 8 weeks of rehearsal, 3 to 5 nights a week, depending on the show, the director, or whatever. That's a lot of time commitment. When you're doing tech, depending on what you're doing, you might come in like 3 days before the show. And it's just a week, And last year in the fall, I did 3 shows, like one right after another. And it was just like 2 weeks here, then 2 weeks here, then 2 weeks here. And it was a lot, But it's to be a part of, like, you're talking about that community. And like I was a part of all 3 of those communities in such a short amount of time. But you do bond even in that short time. It's one of the things I love about that side of it.
It is remarkable. I want to quickly talk about the improv group as well, because I don't think many people in this region understand that we have an improv group, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about it.
It's Olean Community Humorists, we call it. We meet once a week and play improv games. It's similar. That part of it is similar to if you've ever seen Whose Line Is It Anyway? Those kinds of improv games that they play. We don't do the music ones because we're not talented, but we've done a few shows. We're hoping to do more. It's hard to plan a show because we don't have like a strict attendance thing. You just have to, come if you can. Mm-hmm. And anyone who's come to one practice can be in the show if we have one. And it's fun. And when we started it, we were hoping to include like some sketches and stand up and stuff like that. But that requires people to plan it and create the things.
It's kind of the opposite of improv.
Comedy sketches can be a little.
They can be a little loose, but they do need that kind of structure to make them flow correctly.
And like I said before, like I'm not a creator.
You can implement it.
Yeah.
You can kind of facilitate it.
Write me a sketch and I'll make it happen.
What's one of the games you play? We can try it. We'll see how it goes.
A lot of the games we play are are kind of pphysical because physical can be funny.
Oh, okay.
I haven't been able to come to practice in a while because doing the Matilda rehearsals and working like crazy. It was one thing I could give up to be home with my family for a couple hours a week. But I was here on Sunday. I came in late, and they were playing the question game, which is an easy one you can do sitting down. You just have to have a conversation, but you can only speak in questions. Oh. And they have to be actual questions. You can't repeat the thing you just said or the thing the other person just said. And it has to move the conversation forward.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, lads.
Are you serious?
You ready to...
Have you ever played it before?
You ready to give it a go?
No.
Nope, you're out.
Oh.
I'm supposed to say no.
I'm out. I don't know why you're looking at me.
Brutal. That's brutal.
Jeez. I just wanted to watch you suffer.
Sometimes
you did it for me.
Sometimes you play just around like that, and sometimes and a lot of times what we'll do if we have a bunch of people, we'll play it in teams. So if one person's out, the next person steps up and that kind of deal. So it's really just two people having a conversation usually, but it's a good warm-up one too. Just get your mind moving. We used to play that in theater classes at the Olean Theater Workshop when I was in high school too.
Well, that's really good.
That's where a lot of my improv stuff came from, actually. It was games we played in the theater classes there as a kid.
I normally just dissociate and whatever leaks out.
Yeah. We're quite familiar with that.
It's always good to have one of those on an improv team.
So how would you say the growth of this community has been since you started here? Since you joined back into the Olean local theater community?
When I first came back to Olean, I got back involved with Olean Theater Workshop. That was always my home theater. Like, I literally grew up there, not exaggerating, across the street from the theater, and spent all my free time there for a really long time. So when I came back, that was just the natural place for me to return to. And decades ago, when these theaters first began, there was always a rivalry between the Olean Theater Workshop and Olean Community Theater. Yeah. And you usually didn't cross the lines very much. And then it was 11 years ago. Olean Theater Workshop did Les Mis, Les Miserables. We were the first community theater in the country to get the rights to it.
Really?
We weren't the first ones to perform it because other people got the rights after us, but performed it before. But it was this huge thing where we had open auditions. We had people come from Buffalo to audition, Hornell, and we had a lot of people who did stuff with other theater companies come and audition, and it became this big family. And a lot of the people I still hang out with are people that I either met or at least got to know better during that process. And that kind of kick-started, and a couple of specific people trying to reach out to the other companies kind of kick-started connecting the community a little bit more. So, in the last year, I've done shows here at Olean Community Theater, Olean Theater Workshop, Bradford Little Theater, Palmer Opera House in Cuba. I haven't done any shows in Salamanca yet at Ray Evans, but we have a lot of people that do, and a lot of them come here. I've seen them there, I did a performance in Gowanda at the Hollywood Theater, but that was when we took there. I wasn't when we planned there. And me and some of my friends started a new theater company too. And it's all that we're all working together, and I'm not the only one that's doing that now, and it's not just those few people that started it. It's a lot of people.
What's the one you created?
The Guerrilla Theater Project.
Yeah, I saw that online. What's
we started the thing that kickstarted it is that I have a friend, Pabs Singenis, who wrote a play. He's written a couple of plays. And he has one that's a farce, and it's hilarious. And we really wanted to see it produced. But it's a farce, but it's also it has some. The two main characters are a gay couple, and just because of that, there's a lot of people in the area who might not be interested in it. We didn't know if. It's not, and it needs a certain kind of space to be performed into. So there are a lot of places that might produce it, and because it's not a well-known show and it's not a well-known playwright, it could be a risk for a theater company to produce it. Like as a board member here at OCT, I probably wouldn't want to make it part of our regular season, just because I wouldn't know if it would bring in the money. And I know that's a terrible thing, and I don't want, I hate that is part of art, but it is. And especially when you have this beautiful building that needs to be maintained, you have to be able to make
it all
money.
Comes down to money,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it does. But we thought, well, what if we just started a company that doesn't have a building right now, doesn't have overhead, doesn't have bills, and we could do this production without having to pay rights because we know the guy, Yeah. I said I took a show to Gowanda last year. I was not in charge of that at all. They just brought me in to help with tech. But it was just a bunch of my friends who got together and said, we just want to do this show. And we did it at a bunch of places. We did it here. We did it at the community center in Limestone,
Okay.
And we thought we could do something like that. But his show has a much more detailed set. It's like I said, it's a farce. It actually has 5 doors and a window.
Can you define farce?
A farce is an extreme comedy with very physical aspects, and the unofficial rule is 5 doors. Because it's the kind that you think there's always someone coming, someone going from a different spot, and a lot of times it's misconnections that make the things funny and misunderstandings and stuff like that. So it's not the kind of set you can just build
and just
out
of
paper bags like we did for the Trailer Park the Musical was the one that we took to a bunch of places, and the Great American Trailer Park Musical is the full title. And literally the set was built out of wrapping paper.
I remember that, yeah.
You can't do that with, a slamming door comedy. So we needed something a little more official than, hey, let's just get together and put on a show. And we talked about other things that we wanted to see in this area that people just aren't doing. And we thought, well, let's make it official. Let's put it together. We just recently announced what we're doing next year. We have acting workshops, one act festival for new plays or local plays or new directors, whatever, there's going to be, acting workshop. We're going to do a monologue show, which we did one this year, went really well. An audition, it's going to be an audition class, to teach people how to audition better that might be not comfortable doing that. And stage combat. We're going to do a workshop for a play that a friend of ours wrote who wants to see if it could work as a full production. So we're workshopping his musical for him. And
for those that are interested in any of the programs that you listed, what's the fee associated with it?
Some of the programs will have fees to participate, and some of them will be free. The first event actually is taking place at the end of January. It's 24-hour theater, it's called. And you get a group of people who are theater enthusiasts in one room together, and they decide, some of them will be writers, some of them will be some of them will be directors, and the rest of them will be writers, or actors. So they'll write either one short piece or a couple of short pieces overnight, and then in the morning the actors come in and learn the show and they perform it the next day. So it's
like a game jam, but for theater. That's awesome.
Yeah. So from beginning, like from the time they come together to the time the show is performed is 24 hours.
Wow.
And that one's going to be totally free to participate, though. And we just want as many people who might be interested in something like that to come out. And then the performance will be just by donation. Anyone who wants to come see it can see it, but donations are always welcome, you know. Mm-hmm. And a lot of like our work, and we're doing things like in different theaters. We don't have all of the locations picked out yet, but we want to expand a little. We're doing some stuff, and that one is going to happen at the Olean Theater Workshop. We're going to be working with like the dance studios and other theaters. We're reaching out to some of the other theaters outside of Olean to do things, and it's part of what I was talking about before, like building the community and making it more of one community instead of a bunch of little mini communities. Like you were saying earlier before we started this, like it's really just, I mean, what you said, like maybe 200 people.
Yeah, it's like a pool of 200 people total in this
that are
region.
Doing all of these plays in all of these different places, and we want to make it like one family of 200 people. You know,
operation tends to work out.
That's our thought. So, yeah.
Can you define for the uninitiated the difference between Olean Community Theater and Olean Theater Workshop?
Olean Community Theater started first, and they just wanted to bring. There used to be a community theater in Olean way back when, and then it went by the wayside. You know, the people fell out of it or whatever, and a bunch of people. I don't know them all, but Minna Badanis, who was on our board until recently, was one of the people. Her and a bunch of her friends just got in a room like me and my friends did recently and said, let's start a theater company. And they just put on a show and did it as like their first way to raise money and put it all together. And Olean Community Theater was doing performances in all over the area for over 40 years. Only have been in this space. They bought this building 4 years ago, and it's their first permanent home. They were like roving,
traveling
minstrels, yeah. But they were always really focused on putting out high quality performances. Like if you ever saw any of their shows that they did, like at the schools, they did a lot of shows at the Olean High School, Portville School, Allegheny. I worked with them. I did one show with them before I went to college at the Quick Arts Center at St. Bonaventure. And that's just like an amazing space to work in. And they always, like, they put a lot into sets. Here we are still working on the building, you know, so we're still working back up to the intricacies that OCT was able to do before when they didn't have the limitations financially. But it opens up so many other possibilities that it's totally worth it. Olean Theater Workshop actually kind of branched off from OCT, is my understanding. It was before I was born, I think. So, but Mr. Nick and Leslie Patrone, who started it, along with again a group of their friends, they wanted a permanent home. They wanted to be more family oriented and work more with the kids, and so. They originally were doing their classes above the Palace Theater back in like the 90s, and then it must have been mid 90s they bought the church on Washington Street, and turned it into a theater. And they do the kids classes. All of their programming is family friendly, and I mean OCT's is generally pretty family friendly too, but the workshop generally is geared towards kids and bringing them into theater, and I think it works. Like it's a nice balance between.
I know so many kids, you know, even when I was in school. That, I mean, the Patrons are, you know, very present in the schools and the theater productions at the high school. You know, very many people that I know speak very highly of them, and test their love to
Yeah.
theater and performing, to the interactions they had with them when they were younger.
Yeah.
In the workshop, in the schools.
Yeah. They're both really passionate about it. And they both work in the school system, or they did before they retired. So they were, they were always there.
Yep.
I want to kind of reel it back a little bit, because earlier in the conversation you kind of glossed over a few of your earlier inspirations. So let's take it back to your teen and childhood years. What kind of, when you think of, like for me, when I think of things that inspire me and why I'm so into theater, I think of like, space operas like Star Wars and whatnot, and can really like think of those moments that gave me chills and, stuff like that made me love this. What's that for you?
So I can't pinpoint a moment. I mean, the one after I came back from high school, that's the moment when I knew like I wanted to do this forever. I can't really pinpoint a moment that put me into it, but when I was in about third grade, my mom bought me this poster of a ballerina. It was like an embroidery thing. It wasn't just a poster, and it was just pretty. I was a third grader. It was ballerina, hung in on my wall. But I looked at it. I remember looking at it thinking, I could do that. And I asked my mom if I could take ballet lessons. So I started dance classes. Ballet wasn't for me. I did tap. Tap was all right. Then I did jazz, and I liked jazz better. And then I told you I had this friend. Her name was Amber, and she had gone to summer theater with her cousins. And then the summer after 7th grade, she's like, you got to come do this with me. And it was a free program at the Olean High School, which was only a few blocks from my house. And we went there every day for a month and did a show. And it was my first show that I was ever in. I do remember, I have this memory, and I can't be certain that it's real. When I was very young, going to see The Man of La Mancha at the Palace, which Olean Community Theater did, so it could be that I really did go see it. And also I had a cousin who was older than me who did theater, and I remember seeing him in a show, and he was in the theater workshop too. I remember seeing him in a show, and he was so proud of this, and we went to see, it was Oklahoma actually. We went to see the show, and he had one line, and that was it. But he was like, he come home, he's like, rehearsal was awesome. These people are fantastic.
I nailed that one line.
Well, then we went to see the show, and he had one line. I was like, oh, one line. But the fact that he was just so excited about being there and being a part of it, even though he only had the one line.
Well, that one line is important, which is why it's there.
How could you knock that? To make you feel that way. Yeah. So a couple of those little things kind of, I think, led to me wanting to try it. And then once I tried it, there was no going back.
You remind me of a story that I had when, what's the play based off of the Monkey Scopes trial? Do you remember what that's called? You just made that. Yeah, I know. I just made it up. Well, regardless of that, as I'm blanking on the name, I was able to play a priest. It's the only role that I've ever played. Where I walked on stage, I sat in the jury section.
I feel like I've seen a picture of you in this costume.
Because it had So, and my job it wasn't the jury section, because I was being called up as a witness. So they call me as a witness, and then I am rejected as a witness based on the reason XYZ. I wasn't really paying attention. I just ran flies. They needed an extra guy in there. Yeah. So my job was to stand up and then sit down, and I was terrified because I had no idea what my name was.
I'm like somebody Brian. Your name is Brian.
I just waited until someone said Father something, and I'm like, that's me. I'm the only one here with that position.
It's funny. Told your name. It's funny that you say that. They needed a guy, right?
Yeah, they just needed a warm body.
Well, not just a warm body, but a guy specifically, because we don't have a lot of guys that come out and do shows. Never enough. There's never enough guys.
Because they're all like me, and they're like, theater, I can't do that.
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. And the girls have no problem.
They're totally like,
and that's
yes.
part of why I started doing tech, because the girls don't always get cast. The guys always get cast.
They always need guys.
And there's never enough.
Yeah.
the girls don't always get cast, but I always wanted to be involved. I was like, well, if I can't be on stage, what can I do? You know, and that goes back to what we were talking about before. There's a lot of different ways to be involved. And it's not even just tech and on stage. Like, even if you just have one day and you come and, you know, hand out programs or, you know, clean the seats, whatever. Like, there's ways to be involved. And I encourage anyone to come and do it. Anything.
What are some major differences that you see from doing theater in your childhood to doing theater today?
How do you guys do things differently?
I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't think about the whole thing. Like we're talking about, there's so many different ways to be involved. When I was a kid, I was just like, we're going to put on a show. You know, I'll do my part and my friends will do their parts and that'll be cool. But you don't think about everything that goes into it. Mm-hmm. And especially having the building, you know, like you're not just putting on a show. Mm-hmm. Someone's got to come in and turn the lights on, mm-hmm. you know.
Someone's got to make sure the bathroom's working.
Yeah, like I got here today, I had to change the paper towels. You know, it's there's a lot, and it's not a bad thing, but it's a lot you don't think about. You come to watch a show, and not everybody realizes really how much work goes into it. Even the people on stage don't always realize, I think, how much work goes into it.
When you're on stage, you're acting, you have a role that you're responsible for.
You have put a lot of work into it.
Yes, but you have that one thing that you have to put a lot of work into.
Yeah. Like having just directed, Matilda was the first big musical I ever directed. I've done only straight plays up till then. And at the end, it was hard because I didn't have any control over what was on that stage. But I submitted this show over a year before it was produced. And I had it in my head for a year. Like it was on my phone when I turned on my car, the music would automatically come on and play. My kids were singing it all the time because they'd hear the music. I was like putting together a crew in my head before I had, before I had my whole team put together. And it's little things you don't think about, like, like these stairs. Like I wanted 2 sets of stairs, but stairs take up space on stage. So we built narrower ones so we have a little more stage space. Like, and that's just a small thing. That was actually Jake and Tristan built these, but just add that extra, 6 inches on each side meant another person standing on that stage, and it's I don't know. There's stuff I don't even think about, but
yeah, I mean, I think what we do while this is a show and theater.
This is a theater of its own.
Yeah, we totally get the feeling.
Yeah.
Well, because it's like everything. It's always the little stuff. It's always the minutia. It's always like, oh, Jesus, who thought of that? Nobody.
It's like,
we need a USB-C cable. Yeah. That's the only thing we need. And it's not here. Oh, no.
Yeah, it's the little stuff, it's just the smallest thing in your whole equipment package probably is that little cable, but it's the one thing that you can't work without. Mm-hmm. Can't work around.
So this might just be an interest of mine, but I've always wondered how... Thanks, Steve. I've always wondered how the budget works for theater. Like when that money comes in, where does it go afterwards?
It depends on the theater. At the Olean Theater Workshop, a lot of it, both there and here, it goes towards building maintenance and utilities and all that stuff to begin with. And at the Olean Theater Workshop, they have their kids' classes. Their teachers get paid for that. They're professional teachers. Yeah. Actually, the 2 that are teaching now also are actual teachers at schools. The 3, I should say. The piano player, he's retired otherwise, but
he's still professional. He still deserves to get paid for the classes that he shares his knowledge in.
Doug Bushnell is the piano player at the Olean Theater Workshop. He's amazing. He can play anything he's heard, pretty much, and he can change the key on the fly. So, if you get a 4-year-old up there singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in 7 different keys, he'll just follow the kid. And nobody in the audience will know that kid was off. He's amazing.
It was meant to be like that.
Yeah. That's how they practiced it 7 times,
Well, and...
so that's part of it. It goes towards the rights for the next show that they produce. Because every show that you see on the stage, unless it's written by someone here...
Costs money.
costumes, tech upgrades. Here we just had some water damage from that we had to fix the roof and
water damage.
Yeah.
Welcome to Western New York.
But most of it is just going towards the next show, whatever that means. You need money to make money. We're not here to make money. We're here to make shows, but can't do that without.
Well, that's something to make it happen.
Yeah.
That's something.
And I definitely wanted it shown that almost everything, if not everything, is volunteer basis. People are just coming in and making these things happen.
At the theater workshop, those 3 teachers are the only people who get paid. I'm technically on the staff there because I'm their videographer and their electrician, but I don't get paid for it. It's all volunteer. Here, I'm on the board, and everyone on the board pitches in and helps out in whatever way any of us can, but nobody here gets paid for anything.
Now,
except the pit. We do pay the pit because they're professional musicians using their instruments. Wear and tear at least needs to be,
very respectable.
So a theater company, is that just considered a nonprofit then?
It doesn't have to be a nonprofit. We're a community theater, but some community theaters do pay people. That's just not what we're here for. We're here for the show. But it's nonprofit just means you're not there to make the money, I don't know. With Guerrilla Theater, we're in the process of getting our nonprofit status. So I know just maybe a tiny bit more about it than I did a couple months ago, but it's still kind of complicated.
Well, like you said, there are just so many pieces that go into it. I happen to be a number nerd, so I'm like, let's follow the money trail. That sounds like fun.
Do you want to help me?
I can.
Absolutely.
I can do that.
He doesn't even need to answer. I know. You just ask him, and he'll say, "Oh yeah, I can help you with that. Let me put it in my calendar."
That is exactly what I would do.
Exactly what you do.
There's a lot to it, and starting a company, there's a lot to it, and I don't even know it all. I don't even know what.
And you're going through it right now, yeah.
Well,
we literally we did the first step, and then after we did the first step, we learned what the second step was.
It's improv at this point.
It
right?
is.
It's like, we'll just figure it out as we go.
Yeah, kind of. Which maybe isn't the best way to do it, but
no, yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Making a business in New York, for the most part, is 2 parts improv anyway.
Yeah, apparently.
Somewhere along the line, you'll get a little clue. It's like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Well, that's my motivation. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I know the motivation. The motivation is the art, but getting there is hard. So, sometimes.
Spreading your message to the community, what would you like people to know about theater in small communities?
I think we've said it, if you have even the slightest inclination that you might enjoy being involved in some way, do it. If you don't think you have talent, there's things you can do that you don't need any kind of talent for. Like I said, handing out programs, helping clean the theater, we had this one woman who for a really long time would come and she would, before the shows, would read like kind of the history of the theater and maybe little tidbits about the play, and she always wrote them herself, and it was amazing. Like, she didn't want to be in the show, but she produces shows too. So I started out, as an actor, and then I ran Spotlight, and now I'm vice president, of 2 theater companies, and directing giant musicals for kids. And it's you never know where it's going to lead. But if you don't try, you'll never get anywhere, And the other thing is that it is a community, it is about everybody. We want to put on this show. It's not for me. I mean, it's a little bit for me. But it's for everybody, the people who were in the show. Like, I actually kind of joked around, but it's like a half truth. Like, I did Matilda. I submitted Matilda specifically for my son. My son is 9 years old. He just turned 9, and he he loves theater. He was in one of our Shakespeare shows. I think it was 2 years ago, so he was really young. And he'd been doing t-ball, and he did summer soccer, and we were at rehearsal one night, and he looked around. He goes, "You know what? I think this is going to be my sport." 6 years old.
Oh,
right?
That's awesome.
And
That's so awesome.
yeah, he loves it, and he's always asking like, when can I do another show? When can I do another show? He comes to improv with me sometimes and participates.
My heart's gonna explode.
Yeah, he just loves it. And after when COVID hit, they canceled the STAR program at Olean High School.
Mm-hmm. The STAR program is?
The STAR program, which is the summer theater program that I started in way back in middle school.
That I was in and I worked for.
Yeah,
for a couple summers.
It started out as they just called it summer theater, and then they started getting grants and stuff through the state and changed it to, they called it the STAR program. Become a star,
Yeah.
But they did a show every summer, but they also had other classes.
Yep.
And it was just when my son was going to be old enough to start, COVID hit and they couldn't do it. This year, they finally brought it back, but they only had it open to Olean students for the first year and it was only K through 5 too.
Oh, yeah.
But they still had 250 kids.
Wow.
I mean,
But last year when we were putting together a season, we didn't know that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I really miss having something for the kids to do, or something theatrical for the kids to do in the summertime. So I pitched doing a show that would have kids in it as well as adults, because we're not a kids theater, and we're not trying to step on anybody's toes. Like the theater workshop, like I said, that was my home for a really long time. It still is one of my homes. So I'm not trying to like take over the kids theater thing, but for the summer, I wanted something for the kids to be able to do, and it wasn't just my kids, but it was going to be my kids too. They still had to audition just like everybody else, and only 2 of the 3 that auditioned made it in. But
favorites.
Well, my daughter was a little young. I told her, I said she wanted to audition. I said, you can audition, but you're probably not going to get cast because you're younger than everybody else. But I seriously I did it for my son so he would have a show to do because he loves it so much, and I was just really happy to be able to do it for all the other kids too. Like we had a couple of first-time performers here for Matilda, and we had a bunch that have done a bunch of shows, and actually we had 2 Matildas, but one of our Matildas has never done theater before in her life, and she came out and just nailed it, and she won a Tanis Award for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and that was Anna, right? Or was that the other one?
Anna played Miss Honey, who was the
okay.
teacher. Yeah. She also won a Tanis Award for her performance. And our Miss Trunchbull, the bad mean principal, she won an award too. But no, her name is Rue Brown Ragno. She's 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
She does gymnastics, but has never been on a stage, never done theater, never sang in front of people. And she came in and sang Naughty for her performance. She had the accent down. She did some cartwheels, like it was, and she looks like Matilda too. And then our other Matilda is Eliana Lehman-Woolston, who has grown up doing theater. She's been in the theater workshop classes her whole life, except during COVID when they weren't happening. Her mother is Karen Lehman-Woolston, who was a friend of mine from high school, who I mentioned earlier, who reminded me that it was Sound of Music that inspired me my whole life. Inspiration based on a show I couldn't remember. But Eliana was our other Matilda, and she's a little older, but she looks younger than she is. And she was amazing too. The adjudicators didn't get to see her, but I think she would have won an award as well if they had. And the whole cast won an award for ensemble, and the production team won an award for production design. It was great. It was really good, and I loved it so much that I decided to do another one next summer. I don't know what show yet, but
nice.
We're gonna do another show with kids and adults in it.
Speaking of the future, any plans that you can talk about for the next coming years or year?
Well, I talked a little bit about Guerrilla Theater's plans. And I'm happy to see that the Palmer Opera House is starting to do like a regular theatrical season. They do so much there. I don't know if you guys are aware. But yeah, they do things like almost every night they have stuff going on. But they only just in the last year or so have dedicated themselves to also having a regular theatrical season. And they haven't announced anything for next year, but they're doing stuff, and I'm just happy to see it. It's like the whole theater world is growing around here. I love it. Olean Theater Workshop, they just announced their season for 24-25, which their season starts in August, actually. We just did the Shakespeare, Much Ado About Nothing is the beginning kickoff of their season. But they have Crimes of the Heart coming up in October. And it's actually, I was talking about this with Tristan DiFiore, who's a friend of mine, he's on the board here. And he's one of the people who started Guerrilla Theater with me. And we were talking about the Olean Theater Workshop season. I directed a show there last year, and it had only 3 actors in it. And I had an assistant director. And that was my whole team, me and those 4 people. And then at the end, we had some people come in to run lights and sound. And but those 4 people, the assistant director and the 3 actors, are the 4 people directing the 4 shows at the Olean Theater Workshop next year. And I was like, that's hilarious.
Trial by fire.
Yeah. And a couple of them, it's their first time directing.
Oh, wow.
So it'll be fun, I think. I love getting new people in. Again, if you think you might want to do it, come do it.